Son, son, it's time to get up." His eyelids were so heavy that they were barely able to focus on his mother. And the room was pitch black, filled with frost and darkness. The pain in his hands, arms, and legs was almost unbearable. He wished for just 10 more minutes of sleep. No, that would not be possible. Sounds of a large rumbling truck could be heard in the distance. Yells of "hurry, hurry" could be heard throughout their homes. His father first assisted his mother onto the back of a flatbed truck, then lifted his son so he could take his place near her. Everyone was pushing and shoving as they took their places on the truck. There was barely a place to sit, let alone a place to stand. The truck would begin its journey down a dark, dusty road. But the boy's skin burned and cracked as the wind whipped him across his face, his tears instantly drying. His mother did her best to protect him, but she too shivered with coldness. As the truck approached the field, the smell of sugar beets filled the air. One by one, men, women, and children jumped off the truck and took their places on the field. But the boy stood there, with a single tear rolling down his cheek. "What's the matter, son?" his father asked. "I can't, Dad. My hands are frozen to the railing." He was only 9 years old and would spend the next 12 hours side by side his parents in the scorching hot sun of Michigan, picking sugar beets. It was the life that he has always known. In many countries, children as young as 8 years old work over 12 hours a day and sometimes 7 days a week picking crops. And one of these countries is the United States of America. And the worst part is, it's perfectly legal. As a civilized society, we have a responsibility to answer the cries of these children. So today, I will first discuss the problem that farm labor for children is still legal in the United States. Next, I will discuss lasting effects of this detrimental work. And finally, draft a solution that assures that child labor does not exist in our country. Currently, the laws in our nation do nothing to protect children from one of the most dangerous occupations in our nation. The U.S. Department of Labor estimates that there are over 300,000 children working in farming fields across America. In 1938, the U.S. wrote a federal child labor law that guaranteed the protection of all American children, except in agriculture. The law has a huge loophole. Many of the foods served on your tables, such as lettuce, tomatoes, and grapes, were picked by these children. And many of these children belong to undocumented migrant families. And big companies hire these undocumented children for cheap labor. But because they are undocumented, they have to work in these detrimental conditions. So think about that. They can pick the foods served in a Big Mac, but it's illegal for them to serve one at McDonald's. There is a problem when our nation's laws say it's perfectly fine for these children to pick these foods, but illegal for them to serve what they've gathered. As a nation, we are failing these children. The small hands that are used to pick our foods have become invisible to us. The dangers of agricultural labor are a constant threat to children forced into this type of work. Impacts of this occupation can already be seen in the United States. Many of these children are exposed to over 1 billion pounds of pesticides per year. Therefore, the farming community has one of the highest rates of cancer and birth defects. It is not uncommon for a child to be born without noses, ears, or to even be miscarried. Human Rights Watch reports that between 1996 and 2000, 603 children died as a result of occupational injury. And in 1998, 77,000 children required hospital treatment. And in the same year, 230,000 children suffered work-related injuries. These children are using tools such as knives, cutting shears, and machetes. Not to mention they're around large farming tractors, plows, and other machines that can kill someone with just one accident. In Texas just last year, An 8-year-old boy driving a farming tractor killed his little brother, who fell off the back and was crushed by the wheels. In California, a 9-year-old girl swung her machete and severed her left hand. These children should be playing with toys and bikes, not machetes and knives. The economic benefits of this work are nearly unnoticeable. According to The Harvest, a documentary on migrant farm workers, one farm worker may make up to $15,000 per year, which is far below the United States poverty line. This is probably a huge factor as to why parents have to bring their children to work with them. Families see no other choice. The income brought home by one parent or both just isn't enough. These parents aren't trying to provide toys, PlayStations, or iPhones. They're trying to provide food and clothing for survival. It is a curse that no child should have to endure. While many students in the United States are learning math and history, these children are falling deeper and deeper into poverty. It is not uncommon for a family to have to move from state to state following the harvest trail. And these children just can't keep up with their education, so it becomes easier to just drop out. When it comes down to going to school that week or eating that night, survival is always their first. Their hearts scream out hopelessly, and yet no one hears them. Attempts of creating a solution have been futile and half-hearted in the past. Introduced in September 2009, the Guerra Act would ensure all protection of United States farm-working children by extending labor restrictions and hazardous work protections. Unfortunately, the Guerra Act was repealed. Therefore, I advocate that the U.S. Congress reinstate the Guerra Act with 3 added clauses. 1. Set the minimum age of this hazardous job to 16. 2. Limit the amount of hours a 16-year-old can work. 3 hours during school days and 6 hours during holidays. And 3. Impose federal minimum wage. So maybe you're sitting there thinking, this has nothing to do with me. But it does. Children deserve a voice of reason, a voice of compassion, a voice of reassurance, and it is our obligation to give them that voice. We are the United States of America, one of the most powerful countries in the world, somewhere where farm labor should not exist. That 9-year-old boy, at the beginning of my story, that was my grandfather. And that would be the last day he would ever work in the farming fields. His parents vowed to make sure he would never be trapped in the impoverished life of a field worker. He went on to college and earned his bachelor's and master's degree, walked side by side Cesar Chavez, and continues to advocate for farm workers across the United States. One of his favorite quotes from Cesar Chavez is, "We cannot seek achievement and forget about the progress and prosperities of others. Our ambitions must be broad enough to seek the aspirations and needs of others, for their sakes and for our own." So the next time you're sitting there at your dinner table, ask yourself, is there any way I can make sure that a child is never responsible for harvesting my food? Don't pass up the opportunity that can change the life of one child. Change has to begin today, because tomorrow could be too late. Thank you.